There are over 1 billion women expected to be in menopause by 2025, yet most of us still feel completely unprepared. And 80% of women experience symptoms like hot flashes, brain fog, anxiety, yet fewer than 20% actually feel comfortable talking to their doctors about it, partially because they feel gaslighted when they bring it up. And the average woman spends 8 to 10 years in perimenopause, often without knowing she's even in it. This is crazy. I've got a guest on today. I'm going to call her the menopause queen, really, because she has brought this to light. And she currently has a brand new New York Times bestselling book, How to Menopause. So I've got the one and only Tamsen Fadal here. And I've had her on before, but bringing her back.
Hi.
Because Tamsen, you've done so much good work bringing this topic front and center for women. So I just want to personally thank you for that. This is
Thank you.
so needed, so important. Tamsen, you've done so much to bring this conversation top and center. And I just want to personally thank you for it because this is something that I felt like nobody was talking about for a long time. And women were truly feeling gaslit. And I'm going to ask you a little bit about your story. But first of all, thank you for your courage, like even stepping forward and making this such an important topic.
Oh, no, thank you. I think that this is one of those topics that we have no choice. If we want to live healthier lives, we've got to talk about it. And then it leads us to other conversations as well. And I think that that's where we want to be. We want to be having these conversations out in the open, not behind closed doors all the time.
Before I get into a lot of specifics, which I'm going to ask you, I've got a lot of questions for you,
Okay.
but can you just share with my audience, for those that are not familiar with them, kind of what you went through, your background? You were really in the spotlight and what started to change for you?
Yeah, I was a news anchor for a long time. I anchored the evening news for about 30 years, last 15 in New York City. And I was going through, at the time, I guess, perimenopause, but I didn't know. I'd gone through a divorce, a very public and very stressful divorce. And I was having like crazy bleeding. I was not sleeping. I was gaining weight. I was looking at the teleprompter. You read the teleprompter on the
Yeah.
evening news and like looking at a word and forgetting it or couldn't get it out of my mouth. All that was happening. And it was attributed to stress over and over again. Anytime I talked to a doctor about it, anytime I talked to a therapist about it, anytime I talked to anybody. But fast forward one night, I was on the news and I wound up being escorted off the anchor desk because of what I've now learned was a hot flash, a very intense hot flash where I broke out in a sweat, heart was racing out of control. I felt like I was going to pass out. And I landed on the bathroom floor of the women's room. And when I went to go and look for help, I got a note in my patient portal eventually after blood work that said in menopause, dot, 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 any questions. And
Wow.
that was what I got. And that was my entree into a conversation I didn't know I needed to have
Yeah.
or to begin, honestly.
No, you being in the public eye and being in the news world, what was your belief before you started experiencing this about just aging and menopause and women in general? Like, what was your thoughts around that?
Gosh, my mom, I lost my mom when she was 51 and I was 20 to breast cancer. So it was really never a conversation we had. I later learned as I look back that she obviously had gone through a medical menopause, but I didn't know. And I don't know that she knew. I thought about it like it's when you die, it's when you're really old, when you're like way past where we
Mhm.
are. And it was literally never anything on my mind, like never
Yeah.
anything on my mind. And I had gone through endometrium polyps for quite a few years leading up to that, which is why I didn't know I had stopped having a period because you bleed like crazy,
Okay.
with that. So I never had that hallmark 12 months, no bleeding. They weren't periods, but I had no idea the difference. So I had enough opportunity for doctors to say something to me during all this time,
Yeah.
in and out of doctor's offices quite a bit, dealing with it, but had never heard the word perimenopause or menopause. Isn't that crazy?
It
It's
is
not
crazy. I
alone.
mean, it sounds crazy now thinking back on
Yep.
it, but
Yep.
you're not alone on this. A lot of, I mean, even now, I feel like there's so much talk about it, but there's still women in the dark not knowing. And like, I would imagine there's like some shame over that. Like, you start feeling like, what's wrong with me? And
Yeah.
what's like something like, especially I would imagine in your line of work, you're thinking, I got to get it together. Like, I got to be focused. I got to be I'm on camera. Everyone's seeing me.
Yeah, I think the lack of confidence that it gave me during, especially what we now know as brain fog, right? But that lack of confidence was awful. Like I really dreaded going on the set, couldn't wait for it to be over, was anxious, like
Yeah.
just didn't want to have like this would be crosstalk, right? Just ad lib, talking to each other, completing full sentences that you would do with your partner on the set. And it was nothing that I felt comfortable doing. And that's awful.
Wow.
That's just not a place that you want to be. And so, but I just didn't realize it. I thought, is it age? Am I stressed out? Is it a
Yeah.
focus? Am I not sleeping? All those things were happening. And so I guess, when I go back and I look at it now, I'm like, wow, how did I not like push further for answers? But I just
Sure.
did. None of
But
it,
it makes sense. I think we all start justifying like, well, it makes sense it's stress, or it makes sense
of
that there's
course,
this, or
of
or
course.
even like a depression thing because life starts changing at that age. So, even think of like people becoming empty nesters. So they're like, well, maybe it's chalking up to that. Like I don't have things are changing.
And I don't, and because we don't talk about it, it's not a conversation you're necessarily comfortable having or know where to begin the conversation. And I think that
Yeah.
I've realized now, and there's so much to like the community aspect of it. There's so much the lifestyle aspect of it. I mean, you know how important that is.
Yeah.
But I do think that this, as you've said, I think that everyone's heard about it now, and that's not the case.
No.
We've been doing this book tour all around the country now. And, every time we sit down with a group of women, the conversation goes all different places.
Yeah.
It really is, it's amazing to me what women are told. Like one woman recently told me that she went into the doctor's office, had quoted the symptoms that I had said on, one of the videos and in the book. And the doctor came back to her and said, this whole menopause thing is just a trend right now.
Wow.
It's just a trend.
Wow.
So I
Okay.
was like, what?
Dang.
Yeah.
1 billion women expected, and it's a
Sad.
trend.
Yeah, it makes me sad. But imagine an answer like that. Isn't that the
It's
craziest?
crazy. This is going to sound so sexist, and I'm going to say it anyway, but I still have this. Whenever I see a man talking about their opinion about menopause, I'm just like instantly triggered because I'm like, how do you actually know? Like, you did not
Yeah,
walk through this.
I know. I hear you.
So it drives me, and I know that's not politically correct to say, but it makes me mad. I'm like, you don't
I,
know.
I hear you. I
Especially when
totally.
they're in my field, fat loss for women. I see men speaking into, their advertising, fat loss after menopause, fat loss after perimenopause. I'm thinking, what the heck do you know?
Yeah.
You're like,
Yeah. I know. I feel I get it. I do get it. Every once in a while I'm like, that hit me the wrong
yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah. And I know I need to be more involved than that, but it's just how I feel, especially
I get,
going through
no,
it. Like,
get you. I get you. I mean, look, I feel comfortable talking about it because I deal with it, every day.
yeah, me
And
too.
myself, like there's a real struggle. There's no question about that.
Yeah. So when you were navigating this and your doctor sends you that message, like what happened? Did you feel validated? Did you feel like I'm going on a thing now? Like what came up? And did you have friends to even talk to about this?
No, I didn't talk to, it's funny. I worked in news, so a lot of people I work with are much younger than me. I did talk to my best friend about it, and she said, I just went right through menopause. I don't even remember it. And
Oh
I'm like,
gosh.
really?
Those people are rare.
I know. And now that we talk, she read the book and she was like, I think I need to talk to you about some of this stuff. I think I need to talk about, should I be getting on hormone therapy? But yeah, no, I really didn't. I got that diagnosis and then I went to a deep dive myself of like, what should I do? After losing my mom so much
Mhm.
earlier, I didn't know what my options were, what options were available to me. I
Yeah,
was very worried about breast cancer. It's always been kind of like a
for
cloud
sure.
theme that's kind of hung over there of like a big fear, at an age it was very early in my life. So I did go doctor to doctor to try to figure out what to do. If I could implement the lifestyle changes, and that would be enough. But I was having a tough time. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I still couldn't focus. I could, hot flashes were, that could.
I relate to you on that one. I had the hot flashes just like you did. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just I didn't know exactly what to do, and then eventually I found a doctor, and I went one after another. Like I was given pellets, I was given this, I was given that. Do this, do that, don't do this, And then I found a doctor, and I had gotten two sets of hormone therapy. I got one that I just let congeal in the bathroom. I was like, I can't do that. It's not bad enough. Is it bad enough?
Yeah.
And then finally, I had another one that explained to me like the long-term health issues, and I went, okay, Tamsen, you've got to like get it together. So
Wow.
that's what wound up happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to talk about that for just a minute because you said something that most women start to say. And I want to go a little deeper here because you said, I
Yeah.
thought, I'm doing the lifestyle, I'm doing the stuff. Can I just kind of go natural? And what's
Yeah.
interesting is I think there's even still this shame around that I'm going to get some help. Like people think I've just got to go natural, but what they're not realizing is doing the things like the exercise and the eating. It gets harder when you feel like this. Like it doesn't, when you have no energy and no focus, you can't go do that stuff. So why do you think there is this shame? And what advice would you give women about that? Because they go into beat up around it.
Yeah, they really do. And at one of these events, a woman stood up and she goes, question for you. She goes, how bad should my symptoms be before I get help?
Wow.
And I went, if you're asking that question, they're already bad enough because you shouldn't be suffering. But we do go through this shame. We do go through, and we go shame. Look, we go through shame in a lot of different
Mhm.
areas, right?
Mhm.
I'm no longer as quick as I used to be. I'm no longer as this as I used to be, or that as I used
Yeah.
to be. But I will say that if you can figure out a way to move forward with definitive, like, goals and habits and what you need to be doing,
Yep.
shame finally start. You can't wake up in the morning and be like, I'm not going to feel shame anymore. Like, that's
Right.
not going to happen. But I think if you start on a path to discovering what is making you feel better, that finally just starts to dissipate. Because I did have that shame and it has gone away. And I don't, I know it happened, but it was a real
Yeah.
process.
Hey there, if you're finding value in this episode of Midlife Conversations, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button and subscribe. And when that little bell pops up, you want to hit that. That way you are notified of all new episodes so you don't miss a beat. Also, you subscribing and liking helps others find this content. And this allows me to keep growing, keep getting amazing new guests for you, and to keep sharing. Now, the other side of this shame is I see some people super self-righteous about I didn't have any symptoms or
I know.
I'm going about it natural.
I know.
Like,
I know.
what do you think of that?
I mean, look, I think that judging people for how they go through things, like, that's always been bothersome to me because everyone
Totally.
goes through something very, very, in a very different way. And I'll also say this, aside from whatever you can suck up in your symptoms, you really need to look at the long-term health consequences of some of
Yes.
these things. And I think that, when we're talking about bone and heart and health, you
And
can't
brain.
say that in brain. You can't say like, okay, well, I got through the symptoms, but I don't know what's going to happen long term. So
Yeah.
I would really emphasize learning those things
Mhm.
versus just assuming because these symptoms aren't bad enough that you've conquered something. I worry about that.
Now, you said something that a lot of women fear. They fear about HRT and cancer. And I've had many doctors on that have talked about the Women's Health Initiative and it's been debunked and all that. But you have a real life situation where you lost your mom. This
Mhm.
was a heavy concern for you. How did you help yourself decide that? Because there's a lot of women that are still scared because of that.
No, I totally understand. And I get it. It's understandably concerned about it. Look, the headlines that came out that year in 2002 totally blew what the results of that study were to another level of fear. It was something that people hopped on because of the fact that breast cancer is such a fear.
Yeah.
The data did not support what our thoughts are about that right now. We were looking at a different type of a hormone that was being, was there. The population that was studied was very different than what probably should have been in retrospect,
Sure.
what should be if we did a study today. And so the sad thing is that there wasn't much else done to try to dissipate those fears.
Yeah.
Fast forward 20 years, that's why we still have them. They just, I think things just kind of it's almost like telephone,
Yeah.
this to this to this person. And, that's the answer. But if you talk to any expert that has looked at this over and over again, has been prescribing for a long time now, you will realize that so much harm was done to women by not having the information. And most doctors that are experts in this field will say hormone therapy does not cause breast cancer. And
Yeah.
so, look, if you have breast cancer, if you're at risk of a stroke, there are contraindicators. So there are women that cannot do it or should not do it. But for the most part, even most guidelines and organizations say that this is the most effective treatment
Totally.
for hot flashes and menopause symptoms.
And even people that are being told blanket statements like they cannot do it or should not do it, there's sometimes even workarounds like doing topical or doing vaginal or like there's other, you don't still don't have to suffer. Like there's still other treatments.
That's exactly right. And, vaginal estrogen, which is something that is, good for all women, is helpful when it comes not only to painful sex, but also when it comes to treating so many other things that we go through as we age. So I do want women to think like, even if they decide that is not for them, there are other options there for them.
Yeah.
Some of the other symptoms.
So how did you start navigating the information? Because now you're honestly like you're a leader in this, but you really didn't know much about it at all. So how
Anything.
did you even start? And what do you advise a woman that's listening now going, wow, this is kind of the first time I'm being heard or like, where do they start?
I mean, I would say this. I would say that, there was very little comparatively speaking to where we are right now. I would say to figure out, what the symptoms are that you're dealing with, be aware of the fact that there are solutions for them, and deciding whether or not you're going to do hormone therapy or non-hormonal options.
Mhm.
Luckily, we're at a place where we do have some non-hormonal options for hot flashes, which is great. But
Mhm.
I think understanding what you're going through, wherever you are, whether you're in your 40s
Yeah,
and you've got five of these symptoms, or you're 55 years old and say I was never offered that. We're all in different places right now with
totally.
the same information. And so for me, the book, I wanted to make sure that it was for perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopausal women,
Yep.
because we all have something to gain from it. And then we put together a documentary called The M Factor: Shredding the Silence on Menopause. It's only an hour, but I think it really digs into kind of some of the high points of it from 30,000 feet, and then you can go deep down and ask other questions. It's not going to answer every question, but at least it'll give women a starting point to be able to have the conversation. That was really the point of the documentary.
Something else super cool that you
Yeah.
did that like really represents thriving through menopause, or like truly how to menopause, is here you had this identity in a specific career and you have this setback, and you used what you were learning to basically launch a whole nother identity really and career, and which I believe gives you more passion and purpose and all the things. Can you just share a little insight into that? Because I think that's a lacking thing for women too, that they could pivot and do that.
Yeah, I mean, that was nothing I was I was planning on. I
Yeah.
was a news anchor for 30 something years, and this just kept coming up over and over and over again. And I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop asking the questions. It was like the
Yeah.
story that was personal for me. And so I walked away from my career about 16 months ago to do this full time. So we since then launched the documentary that was in October,
Yeah.
and then the book, and now a podcast as well, to just kind of keep diving into these taboo topics, and to have those the talks that we need to have, we want to have. And I'd like it to be a learning platform to just continue the conversation we started with the book.
Do you think doing that though has also helped you be powerful and like thrive through menopause? And the reason I'm asking that is
Oh,
I feel like some people feel like they lose their purpose, also in our at our age group. So like for me, same as what you just described, I feel like I have a purpose. Like I mean, we all have a purpose, but
totally.
like a focus and energy. Has that helped you feel different?
Yeah, I mean, look, I used to have some days I'd be like, oh, I can't even get out of bed and do this one more day. And now I'm in a place where I'm like, I bop out of bed and I can't wait. And I think what's really been amazing for me is to see how it's really helping women. And so that I never really understood what purpose was. I understood what a job was, and now I
Yeah.
really understand what purpose is. And they're very, very different. They're very, very different. And
So
it's
when I
no
first met
lie.
you and I was following you on social media, you were the first one I saw like changing your patch, like your hormone patch. And I'll like literally put mine out on there now too. But you went from kind of you had this anchor life to really showing public stuff. Were you scared of showing this stuff? And
Oh God, I was petrified. Yes, of course, I was petrified. I mean, in time, it got to be more comfortable. Like, obviously, I didn't roll the patch change out right away. But yeah, I got to a place where I was like, you know what? I have to walk the walk. Like, I have to go to the next step. I can't just be like, oh, and then I do my patch, but I'm not going to show
yeah.
you because that's too embarrassing. And so when I did it the first time, though, and I remember when I uploaded that video, I was like, oh God, one way or another way. But yeah, it was
She,
well
for
received.
those of you that aren't following her yet, and hopefully you will after this, but like she did a whole series for a while. She's like, I decided if I'm going to change my patch twice a week, then you're going to do it with me. So she started sharing and talking. You did that for a while. Like you're like, every time I change my patch, I'm gonna put it on and talk to you about it.
Yeah, we did. I mean, it was like, and then people were doing it too. And so I was like,
Mhm.
that's kind of cool. So I felt really good about it. And so I did one recently. It was an older video, but we put it back up there, and it was talking about showing it in a bathing suit for swimsuits,
Yep.
because I was like trying to get my bathing suit like up to
Yep.
it. And then I was like, oh, screw it. I'm not even gonna bother. And then
Tamsen, I wear two patches. Like I'm like, I want more estrogen. I'm like,
I
I
like
literally double
that.
up.
I like that. You know what? I think that, like, somebody said to me recently, like, what about the glue? Doesn't it look awful? I'm like, I don't
Who
care.
cares? I'm
What?
not
I am not trying
stripping
to
anytime
like
soon.
exactly. I am not trying to, that does not matter to me. Not at
No,
all.
I don't care about it. I mean, I think if those of you that haven't been through this yet, like if you don't feel good with, like I was like you, I was having hot flashes. I had all the things, and I
Yeah.
tried the black cohosh, did nothing for me. Like I
I
did
know.
all the stuff.
I know. I still try to, like, be supportive of that, because I know that there's some people that can't or don't want to do it, but it was really hard for those changes to take place.
Totally.
with that. I agree with you 100%.
I felt like for me, when you go on the right HRT, it's like you get your life back.
Yeah. 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 I would agree with that. I
The
would agree.
lights come back on. It's just like
The
you,
lights come back on. That's
yeah.
exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. And I think that, and it's not a one and done, that it's, you've got to measure it out, make sure that it's good.
Hmm.
Like I've had to go up, I've had to go down, I've
Me
had to
too.
all sorts of things, but that's normal. Like I'm okay with that. As long as I know I'm moving in the right direction. If I wasn't moving in the right direction, I wouldn't even know what to do.
Yeah. What do you think about this? Is kind of a different question, but I'm curious what you think of the whole news world and media and like Hollywood and all that when it comes to aging and menopause. Like, what's your take on that? Do you think it's helping people or hurting people right now?
That, mean the old school thoughts about
Yeah.
it. Oh yeah, well, of course, that was an industry I was in forever with local news, even, is that it was like youth mattered. Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm hoping that we have a change. I don't think it's going to come overnight, but I hope we have some kind of change where like women in midlife are being heard and seen, and that women in their 30s aren't fearing this next stage because it's like the best years are behind you. I don't subscribe to that.
No, I feel personally like very hopeful because I'm seeing more and more. I think because we don't have just traditional media. Like we
Uh,
have podcasts, we have YouTube, we have social media, like we have all these other ways for people to get their message out. And then it's speaking for itself because people are following along with that, right? So I almost think like traditional media, if they don't catch up, like there won't be a thing because people
Right.
are finding what they want to follow.
Well, and I'm glad about that too. And it's funny, like my feed has totally changed so much. Now my feed is like exactly what I want. It's like menopause and midlife
Yeah.
conversations and fitness and working out. It's like it's great. And so I don't see I see great sides of it because the conversations that I really want to have are happening.
Totally.
Right.
Totally. What do you want women to know listening? Like that are maybe feeling really down right now and they're just like in that give up mode. Like this sucks.
I would like them to know that there is hope and that, but you've got to take action and you've got to take charge. And it's really why I wrote the book the way I wrote it. I know how difficult it is. I know what it feels like to be just kind of floundering around and like, what do I have to do today to just try to feel a little bit better? And that sucks. It really
Hmm.
does. So I want them to know that there is a way to take charge, and I want them to know there are things they can do right away to help with that. And I want them to know that like this other side can be pretty amazing, pretty
Yeah.
and to look forward to that, to embracing that.
And then how do you feel about like even, and this is a weird question because I know this isn't necessarily you, but this is a big thing with beauty changing and when aging really does affect us. And my gosh, you were in the
Yeah.
media. Like, what do you think with women and the ideas of like all the cosmetic stuff that they're doing or trying to look youthful?
Yeah.
Do you have an opinion? Do you have a thought? Do you have any advice around that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I try to do things that make me feel good, so I will never say don't do them. But I
Mhm.
will say this, we're not going back to what we were before. So you have to, like, this is as young as you're going to be right now.
Mhm.
That is really the truth. And when you think of it like that, you have to decide what you want to put into it. I don't want to try to fight to be 26 every day of my life. Like that's a losing battle. And I think it sets you up your mindset for a lot of disappointment. And that doesn't mean to give up. That means to be as incredibly healthy as you can be right now. And I think that that's got to weigh out over things because it doesn't matter how pretty you are if you're not healthy,
Yeah. You had a post, and I don't remember all the specifics, but I remember the picture. You showed a picture of yourself. You must have been like in your late 20s or early 30s. And you were pointing out like the physical appearance of
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And you were kind of like talking to that girl, like what she didn't know. Do you know which one I'm talking about? But what stood out for me is that you get it and you've like evolved in this shift. And I think most people, more often than not, are still stuck in that comparison.
It's hard.
So, what advice do you have for that? Because you just said something very clear, like we're not going back, we have to. But what advice, like how do you get there? How do you get to that place?
I think for me, because it was hard for me. I mean, I was in an industry where they said to me, "You're going to probably leave the industry because there's going to be a younger girl sitting next to the older
Wow.
guy. It's not
Wow.
the other way around." And it turned out it was the other way around. I was the older girl, about
Wow.
10 years older than my co-anchor, and so that was kind of cool. But yeah, I think that you have to really understand who you are inside, and I think it comes back to the conversation we were having earlier with purpose. I think it's really embracing, what you want, who you are, why we're here, and what's really going to be important. And for me, look, I love being that age. It was great, but I was struggling. Like I thought I had
Hmm.
perfect all the time. I had a lot of pressure. I don't feel that anymore. I feel like
Yeah,
very excited. The pressure I feel now is how do I help more women? You know, what do we need to do next? And what's going to get us over a line where we feel like this is taking a turn now so all women have access? Like those are my important points. Back then
Mhm.
it was how long do I have to stay at the gym? You know, oh my gosh, I got to get my Botox and I've got to keep my job because
Totally.
and then balance 100 other things so nobody knows I have any stresses. Like those are
Wow.
two different people. And so I would have women take inventory of, where they are and what's really important and what they want the next 30 to 50 years to look like. Because I will tell you that is not sustainable.
No, it's not. And that's what's going to depress people because we
And
cannot control that.
and short-lived in terms of the happiness because it constantly changes. It's almost like the whiteboard changes every
For
day.
sure.
Every day it changes. You start over again.
Yeah, I mean, I personally walk through struggling with that too. Same thing. I mean, different industry than you, but the industry that I come from, like very focused on body and looks and all.
Sure.
So it's almost
Sure.
like you have an identity crisis. Like, well, if I'm not just that, like what
Right.
else is
Who
there?
am I? Who am
Yeah,
I?
who am I? So I think there's a lot of, and
Yeah,
I
I know.
think they
Too.
get dismissed. Yeah, some of them get dismissed. Like, just embrace it.
And that's kind of the roadmap that we were never given, And so that's why I think these conversations are so important. And I think that we can't have them enough. And I think that the more we see another woman having them is to step up and help embrace that and share that message. And that's where I feel like we're going. I don't feel this competitive thing that maybe I felt when I was in my 20s or
Yeah.
30s. And I really appreciate that because I feel like we're all moving in the same direction.
For me to see those as well. No, I know you're married and your husband he was basically he was with you going through a lot of this
Yeah.
change. How did he respond and did you have to I mean, what did you have to educate him on some of this? And what about the women listening that they're
Overeducated.
okay, yeah. And what about the women whose husbands are just not getting it and just not what do you think
Gosh,
there?
I'm hopeful that they're willing to, if they don't get it from their partner, they're at least are willing to read something quick or watch something quick to kind of get a little bit of it. I am seeing some hope with that. On the book tour, we had one guy come up to me and he said he was sitting there with his wife. He was like really intensely listening. And I couldn't tell if he was like over it and annoyed or interested. I
Mm.
just couldn't tell. Like I was like, oh gosh, are we boring him? Or like, I don't know if he's supposed to be here. And at the end, he came up and he goes, I have a question for you. And I'm like, oh boy. And so I go, yes. And he said, I have two daughters, 25 and 35. When should I start having them learn about this? And I said,
Aw,
he walked back up to the front, got two more books, and not just made them to
aw.
his daughters. He made it out to his daughter and son-in-law, each one.
I love
I thought
that.
that was the coolest thing ever. And so I was like, oh my gosh. So we posted him everywhere. You probably have seen him, but he
I
was
love that.
amazing. So I'm hopeful that once guys hear something that they start to ask more questions because it's not just partners. It's also in our workplace. It's also in
Yeah.
our community. It's also, sons looking at mothers going through this. It's, sisters looking at other older sisters going through it. So I think we have a lot to learn ourselves. And
Yeah.
as long as we can start making it a normal conversation, even when it doesn't feel comfortable, that's when we start bringing the men into this. And I think some evolved men are, are listening.
Something that you've done, and I've definitely done, and I think a lot of people have done, but most people don't recognize, and I think this is
Yeah.
important, is you made a decision. You truly made a decision that you were going to figure this out and you were going to have a different reality around it. You decided, you didn't say, I'm going to be defeated by it. This sucks. This is going downhill. And I do think it's important for women to hear that too, because I think what happens is a lot of women will commiserate with friends, commiserate with their doctor, and then somebody might even say to them, this is normal. It's aging. You're just supposed to accept it. And it's almost like they start believing and they don't even try to have a different viewpoint. But I
Yep.
watch women that are actually navigating it quite well and look like they're thriving. It's
Yep.
because they made a conscious decision that it was going to be different for them.
Yeah. Oh, I think so too. I think that, that mindset is a big part of this. There's no question. It's why half of the book or the third half, yeah, third of
Mhm.
the book is about lifestyle
Yeah.
and mindset. So I think that's a big deal. And I think that we can say that with anything, right? If you're going into something like dating, I don't even care if
Yeah.
you're dating, like this
Or
is
starting a business, anything.
or starting a business. And I think you've got to do that here. And I think you've got to double time it here. Because
Yeah.
it can be very discouraged. There could be a lot of discouragement along, in this phase. But I will say that mindset's a huge part of it. It's a huge part of being able to get the help and also a huge part of how you heal if it's symptoms or
Sure.
how you move into this next chapter. Because do you want to go into this next chapter like feeling awful, feeling
Mm-mm.
depleted, feeling like your best years are behind you and kind of hopeless. And I think that it can go one of those two ways. So you have to make a decision, like a definitive decision of what you want it to look like. And it might not look like that right away. And it
Mhm.
probably won't, quite frankly.
Now,
But
I would imagine when you started your kind of journey with social media, like, and then even before you wrote your book, you were not planning on building this menopause community. I'm assuming it like came just from you sharing what you were really walking through. I'm wondering when like the vision kind of hit you that you've got to be bigger and do the book and do the documentary and all of that.
it's funny. I didn't have like a plan out. I just knew I kept asking questions and I knew they had to go somewhere, the answers, because
Yeah.
they were helping me so much, then I knew they would help somebody else. And so that's what come when I started on social. And then I was introduced, and actually she just sent the letter to me today. I was introduced through a mutual friend to my documentary partner. And she was like, you guys keep talking about menopause. So here I'm going to introduce you to each other. Good luck. And with your menopause conversation, haha. And that became my documentary partner. And
That's wild.
because we were like, we keep sharing this over and over again, but we need to share it with other women. So that's where that started. It was very like a grassroots approach. It wasn't like, let's get a film company and make it fancy. That was nothing. And then as I was going through the course of that, I'm like, gosh, there's so much that we're never going to be able to get into that film. I have
Yeah.
like right in unison with this. And so that's what I was doing. And then there were like kind of those other areas of it too, of lifestyle and fitness, and just we couldn't fit all that.
Yeah.
And I just had so many people I wanted to interview because I love interviewing. So
Yeah.
I've been interviewing like 42 different experts for the book, which was just like a lot.
Yeah. A lot.
But I think
That's
necessary
good.
because I don't think that this conversation ends, and as you know, it doesn't end in
Yeah.
the doctor's office.
It doesn't end. I love this. You guys, if you have not heard of her book yet, she just hit New York Times bestseller, which is awesome. It's called How to Menopause. And you can get it. Where do you want them to go to get it? I know that's available Amazon everywhere. Is there a special place to go?
Anywhere, get your books. Yep.
Anywhere. But
Get your
don't
books.
just buy one, y'all. Buy like three or four and give them to your
Yep.
friends. Seriously, because it's not, because I don't think this is an alone conversation. Like this is,
It's
and
not.
I think it is, you would be surprised, y'all, how many of even our own friends in our network like just don't get it or know it. And I think it's like, it's such an important conversation. So
You.
this is, I love that there's more and more coming up on this topic. Even, gosh, I look at my podcast, like, what episodes people listen to, all the ones about menopause and
I know.
hormones. They're like, that's what people want.
I know. I know.
We're
Well, because
hungry for
we
it.
understand it. We want to look, we're playing catch up for like our whole lives, and we're trying to do a
Yeah.
crash course in all of it. So I think it really makes sense. And the conversations that you're having around menopause and in menopause and beyond menopause are the ones that are critical to us right now, if I can say so.
Where do they watch your documentary? Where do they find that?
Yeah, so the documentary, if they go to mfactorfilm.com, there's different
Okay.
ways to get it now. We were licensing it out for free for people. So some people will bring it into their communities. Others have decided that they want to like get the DVD so they can just, keep it for themselves. We're still having screenings coming up in different places. So we had a screening in Chicago 3 nights ago, and I think we have a few more there. So they can find the events there. They can
That's
find
amazing.
access it. Yeah, it's thank you. It's been incredible. We did not expect that. We did not expect that.
What did I not ask that you wish people would ask you?
Oh no, I love this conversation. Yeah, I think you're just so into it with me. I feel like you and I could days.
But is there something that like you're like, I need women to know this, and you like,
Well, I think I just want women to know this. I think when women say like, I can't find the right doctor, I know that can be really frustrating. And so I do want women to know that, there are some resources out there. MenopauseSociety.org is one. And then I would also say that there are a lot of telehealth companies where you can get help right
yeah,
away. Like I don't want women to think they have to wait 6 weeks to get a doctor's appointment
yeah,
where to start getting help. And that worries me. And so I would like women to know they can do that today. And so that's what I would
yeah.
encourage. And I think there's
Tams,
really great
I,
companies out there.
I do have kind of like a little bit of a health question. I know this is not your particular expertise, but because I featured so many doctors on here, and I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
want to confuse people either,
No.
I always say there's kind of like an order of operations. And I want you to tell me if you agree or you disagree, and I'm not attached. But I say there's kind of an order of operations. Like step number one, are we eating well and moving our bodies? Like, and are we in the right mind space? And
Yeah.
then kind of step two, we got to look at all the different detective areas like our gut health, our
Yep.
thyroid, our hormones. It's not just like a one and done. Like,
No.
what's your opinion on like kind of that well-rounded approach? Because they're listening to you and they're like, okay, I'll get your book and I'm gonna talk to a doctor, but what do you want them to take into account for their own knowledge and
I
health?
mean, 2/3 of the book is lifestyle. 2/3 of the book is all of that. It's the eating, it's the movement, it's the mindset. I have the 3 M's there. I
Yeah.
think I want them to take this into account. They're the only ones that know their body very, very well.
True.
You can go to 100 doctors and get 200 opinions. You've got to know what you're going in there for. You've got to test these other areas too. Like, I really do believe that. My thyroid has changed. I've had a lot of different things that gut health
Yep.
is essential. It's been a huge focus right now for me personally.
Yeah.
And so the more that I keep seeing this and hearing it and understanding what's changed with me, like,
Yeah.
I can eat something I ate 6 months ago. My stomach exploded. I feel,
It changes. Like enzymes change, everything changes.
have changed. And so I would not think that this is not like, do I do hormones or do I not do hormones? That's not the only question. Like, that's yes.
That's the quick fix. Like
True.
it's not, it doesn't work that way.
First.
You've got more to it.
But we have to talk about root causes with this, because I really do worry that you can go to a lot of you can get band-aids on a lot of different.
Totally.
And so I think that that is where that confidence that we were talking about earlier comes from. That is where that, hey, I'm in charge now. And I think that that spreads out to all different areas of our lives. And that's why the subtitle is Take Charge of Your Health and Reclaim Your Life. It wasn't to be like, you go, but it would
Yeah.
be like, hey, I want you to know that it's you that it has to start with.
Yes.
Start anywhere
And
else.
she gives actual steps in here, y'all. So it's really good. So How to Menopause is her book, and you want to go watch The M Factor. So I'm going to go find that. I've got to watch that now. I'm
Yeah,
like,
let me know and I can send you a
I'm
version, whatever you need.
excited about it. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for being here
Oh my
today. Thank
gosh,
you.
thank you. And I'm hoping this starts up some book clubs so women in their own communities
I love that.
verse. So if anybody needs it, I have a discussion guide we can send over to. And if you
Oh, that's amazing.
just let me
Thank you.